It's very strange to be here because I look around and you people are all, smart, successful people who are building this country, and I am cheap carny trash. And the journey from cheap carny trash is what I really am. I got out of high school. Notice I don't say graduated. I got out of high school on a plea bargain. I had reasonable SATs. And I went in the beginning of my senior year, and I said to my principal that if I wanted to pass, because that was important to my family, that I actually finish high school, but I wasn't going to come to school anymore because I was sick of that, and that if he did not graduate me at the end of my senior year, I would give an impassioned speech to the school board that they were not dealing well with their gifted speakers, gifted students. And he said to me, "Are you threatening me?" And I said, "Yes." And we made that deal. So by the time, before I finished high school, I was out on the road in the USA. I had read that Bob Dylan had hitchhiked across the country and hopped trains and lived homeless for years. And so I did that. I actually did it for 2 years, and then found out later when I met Bob Dylan that he went directly from the University of Minnesota to New York City and became a superstar within 6 months. So he actually never hopped a train and never hitchhiked and never went all around the country till he was doing it in a fancy bus and a private jet. But I did, because I was unable to do the arithmetic that if he had his first album out when he was 19 and he'd gone to college, he did not have a lot of time for hopping trains and doing all that. So I learned to eat fire. And I learned to juggle. I'm going to be a really good juggler. And I went to Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Greatest Show on Earth Clown College. And I say Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Greatest Show on Earth Clown College all the way through, because if you work for Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Greatest Show on Earth and you ever say circus or show or the Ringling Show without saying Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Greatest Show on Earth, you were fined. And we weren't paid that much. So I always say Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Greatest Show on Earth. And I was tracked. I met Teller when I was 18, right about that time that I was, living in America, I guess you could say homeless, although I could have always gone back with my parents, and they were my relationship with them was wonderful. So I wasn't in danger. I just didn't have a place to live. And I was traveling around the country. And I met Teller when I was 18, and we started putting together our magic show. And that was, 40 years ago. And we've been working on it at that time. And I guess we were kind of fast-tracked to be Hollywood liberals. I guess at this point in my life, I'm in show business. I got this kind of impotent ponytail back here. I probably should be a liberal. I probably should be a Bernie Sanders supporter, and I should be feeling the burn. And instead, I'm kind of thinking, well, maybe you should feel my Johnson. But I'm not. I'm not feeling the burn, and I'm not really a liberal. And everybody who is libertarian or Cato, the way the media and the way people tend to present us is that we're conservatives, or we're people with money that want to smoke dope, is what's sometimes said. And that's really not true at all for me. I do not come from to libertarianism because I am a really successful business person or a CEO, or because I have to fight regulations or any of that kind of stuff. I really come to it from a purely hippie point of view. I have always been a peacenik, and when it got to be the 80s, I met a man named Tim Jennison. I don't know if any of you saw a movie that I made called Tim's Vermeer. But it's a movie about a genius who started to figure that maybe Vermeer, the 17th century painter, had used lenses and equipment to be able to paint. And maybe what we were actually seeing from that time was photographs from the 17th century and not paintings at all. It's a crazy thing. It took us 5 years to make the movie. It took us a lot of money. Tim founded New Tech, which is a video company that kind of let CNN edit the first Gulf War. It made video editing. It changed the whole world, and he made an awful lot of money that way. And I became very close friends with Tim Jennison before he was painting a Vermeer in his warehouse in Texas. And I was then just your kind of standard liberal there in the end of the 80s. And Tim was libertarian. He was pro-freedom. And Tim was also brilliant. And Tim was also really successful. And Tim was also compassionate. And Tim was also a peacenik. And I started giving all the arguments for why the government had to be more powerful and do all these things, and all the arguments that you now hear as feeling the burn. And Tim said a really simple sentence to me. He said, "Do you think it's okay to punish people who've done nothing wrong?" And I said no, even though I kind of felt somewhere in my heart it was a trick question. And then he said, "Then why is it okay to reward people who've done nothing right?" And he said, "Because can't you see that you can't reward without punishing? They are the same thing." And that shut me up for a little while. And then Tim started saying, "You're so against force. You've never hit anybody in your life. You have been beat up. You've been in carnival situations that have gone badly, and people have hit you and you've not hit them back because you didn't think it was life-threatening. You are insanely peacenik in terms of the way you see war and what the country should do. Why do you think it's so okay for the government to use force to get things done that you think are good ideas?" And Tim and I were very, very close. And Tim did not try to seduce me. Tim did not try to make the things we disagreed on seem like nothing. He said, "You're wrong. You're an asshole. Think about this." Turns out to me, that's the way you argue with me. Because that's the way you show respect. You're saying, I'm really telling what I really think. I'm not going to try to trick you or try to be nice or suck you in. I'm just telling what I think. And I started thinking that one really good definition of government is supposed to have a monopoly on force. They're the only ones who are allowed to use force legally. And then we are supposed to be the government. And I didn't come up with any sort of belief in the invisible hand will make us all richer or there'll be prosperity. I know people make those arguments, and they're probably right. But that's not where any of my love for libertarianism comes. It comes from this simple idea that the government are the guys with the guns. And we are the people who tell the government what they can do. So in my morality, I shouldn't be able to tell anyone to do something with a gun that I wouldn't do myself. Now, I want to add here that I am incompetent and I am a coward. So this is all theoretical, what I'm about to say. I wouldn't actually be able to accomplish this stuff. But if you asked me, if someone is being murdered, would you use a gun to stop that murder? Now that's saying that I know it's a real murder going on and I know the person is innocent and all of that stuff going on. But this is the Gedonkin, it's a thought experiment. Would I use a gun to stop a murder? Yeah. Would I use a gun to stop a rape? Yeah. Would I use the threat of a gun, stop robbery? Yeah, I think you kind of got to. Would I use a gun to protect our country and our way of life? Yeah. Would I use a gun to build a library? No. Do I think libraries are really important? Wicked important. Really important. Well, I mean, I came from a dead factory town in western Massachusetts before the internet. You know, without the Greenfield Public Library, I wouldn't have had a chance. I rode my bike there every day. I read everything. When Frank Zappa put in the back of the album Lumpy Gravy, do not listen to this until you've read Kafka's In the Penal Colony, I jumped on my bike and rode to the library and read it and then came back and listened to the record. I follow directions well. So will I give my money to help someone build a library? Yeah. Will I ask other people to give their money to help build the library? Yeah. Will I beg other people to give money to build a library? Yeah. Will I lie to people to give money to build a library? A little bit. Will I use a gun to get someone to build a library? No. And that is, in a nutshell, my entire view of politics. That I have to look over what people want the government to do and say, if I were given all the power, would I use a gun to accomplish what they want to accomplish? And you know, I am a huge fan of art, and I'm a huge fan of crazy art. And I'm using a very broad definition of art. I'm using Teller's definition of art, which is anything we do after the chores are done. So I put Picasso and Ron Jeremy in the exact same category. Me, the mall Santa, Bach, we all have the same job. But Teller and I, before we met Tim Jennison and before we actually called ourselves libertarians and came to shindigs like this where they, for some reason, are allowing in carny trash, we had a lot of run-ins with government art groups because there was a theater in Philadelphia called the Walnut Street Theater. It's still there. And upstairs at the Walnut Street Theater was Theater 5, which was a little tiny room, much smaller than this, sat 100 people. And they would do shows up there. And they had grants up the ass. They had grants, local grants, federal grants, just grants to put together little experimental theater shows in this 100-seat theater on the 5th floor of the Walnut Street Theater. The big theater was downstairs, about 1,000 seats. And Teller had gone to college. He did go to college. I don't know why you got the dumb one here, but you did. I guess because the dumb one talks. These people that had the grants, Teller had gone to college with one of the theater group people there. And they had to put up, now they got all their money paid by the government, but they had to put up one new show I think it was every 6 weeks. They had to put a new show in there. So this group of people who were totally being supported by grants and had a theater given to them had to do this show every 6 weeks. And Teller and I at this point were street performers. We went out to Head House Square in Philadelphia, and I would do a 12-minute juggling show, and I would then pass the hat. I'll actually pass the executioner's hood because I ended the show by juggling blindfolded knives with a blindfold over my head. And my end was, I'm now going to do a magic trick. It's not a juggling trick, but it is perfectly ordinary, everyday household executioner hood and transform it before your very eyes into a change purse. There, it's done. Now, in order to prove I was successful in this transformation, I will need money from each and every one of you. Now, the people who came in late for this show, you didn't get to see the whole show. I don't expect you to pay me any money, no. But I do expect you all to hold hands and not let anybody else get out until they've paid me the money. Well, I was a very, very successful street performer. I was so successful as a street performer that I shouldn't tell this publicly, but I will, that I went to an accountant and I said, I'm 19 years old, I've been doing street juggling, and I got all this money and it's all in cash, and shouldn't I declare it on my taxes? And he said, yes, do you know how much? And I said, yes, I'm rather careful about this stuff. I've written down how much I made at every single show, and I've added it up, and I know how much I make. I work, Friday night, all day Saturday, and Sunday until 5 in the tourist area, and I do my little juggling shows, and this is the amount of money I make, and I want to know what I should do in terms of taxes. And he said to me, well, how much is it? And I turned over my books, which are all written in my handwriting, very, very cute, everything I'd written out, everything I made. And he said, if you give this to the government and say you made this much money street performing, they will think you're a drug dealer and they will put you in jail. And then he added, as a matter of fact, I think you're a drug dealer. So I was advised not to pay taxes. So we were street performing, and we had this dream of doing a full evening show. We wanted to do like a 90-minute show, like indoors, with like lights and stuff. And I was buying lights, and I was buying that, but we needed a place. And Teller had gone to college with this guy who had a grant. And he said that we didn't know they had grants. We thought they were the same as us, because we've never, even to this date, in terms of arts money, we've never taken any sort of grants like that or anything. But we didn't know they were getting. We thought they were the same as us, that they made money from ticket sales. So they said that they couldn't get together their show. 6 weeks with nothing else to do. They couldn't do a goddamn show. Shakespeare's in the public domain. Do that, schmuck. But they couldn't get a show together. So they said, you can have our theater to put your show on, and you only have to pay us a little bit of money, and you can have the whole space and do the whole show. And we were thrilled to pieces, just thrilled to pieces. And we worked really hard, and hard for show business. Please, no one in show business has ever worked hard. It's not digging ditches, but we worked as hard as you can and still be in show business and not have a real job. And we went out and did press releases and got reviews and did all that. And that 100-seat theater, when we were in there, was sold out for the whole 6 weeks. That was the first thing we did. We sold out, and we made money, and we paid them. And then the head of the Walnut Street Theater and found out that our show had been so successful. They'd never been successful in there at all. And came to us and talked to us, and we didn't know. We didn't know we were blowing the G on the joint, to use Carney terms. We did not know we were giving up a secret, to use, I guess, regular people terms. But we told him, whoa, this is how we made our money, and we're doing okay, we're doing fine. And he said, and how much of the grant money did you get? And we said, well, grant money? No, we just happen to have the theater. Thank you so much, sir. We really appreciate it. It's really helpful, that small amount of rent. And he went, rent? We said, yeah, the small amount of rent that we're paying to. I said, well, this has been wonderful. We're making our living. We're doing everything. It's going great. Well, anyway, they lost all their grants. And then there was all sorts of articles written on how Penn and Teller were destroying the arts in Philadelphia because we had lost the grants that were supposed to be federal because we went and ratted out the people that were doing the real important, significant work that we weren't doing because we were commercial. So there was something that set me up in the early days. Teller and I were always very uncomfortable. And when the 80s came around and there was all that controversy over a few artists. There was the Piss Christ art, and there was an artist named Warner Rolowitz, who was an artist in New York, and they did art that was very, very controversial, and very, very blasphemous. and they lost some of their NEA grants. And I was in a very awkward position because I was a freedom of speech nut, and I thought that they absolutely should have the right to do whatever art they wanted. And I was also remembering my Theater 5 days in Philadelphia. I also didn't think that the government should pay for them. And although I am an atheist, my mom and dad were very strong Christians, and I was very close to them. And I had that image in my head of the gun, and I looked at this art that I loved that was so blasphemous to my mom and dad, and I was so appalled by the idea that my mom and dad were having a gun held to their head to pay for art that I loved, but they didn't. And that, to me, was libertarianism in a nutshell. I wanted those artists to have their work everywhere. I wanted those artists to be very, very successful, but I did not want anyone that did not like that art to pay for it, and certainly not to be forced. So what happened was, when Warner Rolowitz lost the grants from the NEA, I went over to his studio, and he was a little surprised that I'd showed up there, because I'd been on TV a few days before saying that I didn't think the NEA should exist at all, and he shouldn't get any money whatsoever. And then I showed up in his studio and said, "I'd like to buy a lot of your work. I want to buy it because I really, really like it." And he said, "Well, why did you speak on the other side? Why are you against me getting the money?" And I tried to explain that to him, and maybe some of you have tried to explain this to an artist. Maybe you've had more luck than me. But I tried to explain art to Donald Trump, so I know what pissing up a rope is like. But I bought a lot of art from him. As a matter of fact, with some of my friends who were in a similar position to me, we bought enough art from him to actually make up for his grant. And now I own that art, and it's worth a shit ton of money now, so I turned out okay. But that's really my only point of libertarianism. It's my only argument. I've read such wonderful defenses of the invisible hand, and I've seen all the numbers, and I know how important it is to let the free market work, but I have no faith. I don't believe in things that aren't proven, and I can't say in good conscience that I'm absolutely sure that if you took regulations away and let the free market run wild, that everyone would be doing better, and everyone would be happy, and everyone would be living in utopia. I can't even hint at that. It might be true. I don't know. It makes sense that it would work, but I don't know. But I do know that if this is a government by the people, and I'm one of the people, and the government is the one with guns, I know that it is immoral for me to use the government, to use force, to use guns, to do anything that I wouldn't do myself. And that's how I became a libertarian. But luckily, this is all ancient history, because all of the candidates we have for president now are so in favor of small government and freedom that everything's okay. And I was talking to people down here. Yes, because people seem to want to know about this. Yes, I did lose a wicked lot of weight. I lost over 100 pounds. And yes, I was on Celebrity Apprentice. I did 2 tours of duty on Celebrity Apprentice. I also did, the All-Stars as well as the regular one. No, I did not win. Donald Trump did tell me backstage that I had won in terms of all the objective criteria, but a lot of it was subjective, and he didn't like me. And actually, I'm the only one that stuck up for him there. And this ties in directly with the stuff the Cato Institute stands for. The rules of that game are that Donald Trump decides the winner. So Donald Trump cannot cheat. It's impossible. If he does not like you and therefore you don't win, he was the one deciding, so part of your job was to suck up to him, and I didn't. So the only two people that seemed to agree that I shouldn't win were me and Donald Trump. And that is the last thing the two of us have ever agreed on. And I should tell you this just because I'm proud of it. The reason he didn't like me is that I said, not public, well, yes, publicly, and yes, many times. I said that his hair looked like cotton candy made of piss. Doesn't it? Precisely and exactly look like cotton candy made of piss. Thanks for letting Carney Trash come to your shindig here. They're going to ask some questions here? Is that what they're going to do?